Welcome back to yet another video. This video tutorial is about the difference between Docker and Podman. In this today's world where containerization is much most important, when you're dealing with cloud, when you're dealing with multiple instances of your application, containerization will save your part and it will deal your uh, problems. So when it comes to scaling up, when it comes of security, when in terms of making your application up and run in a short period with the same set of infrastructure and environment. So we'll discuss about the difference between the Docker and the Podman. So definitely Docker was earlier been introduced, and like recently Podman been coming in, and people are discussing and using Podman as well. So we'll discuss about this too, what exactly Podman and Docker are about, and what are the key differences. Okay, so let's look into it. So this both are, as I mentioned, it is used for containerization. Okay, so where you have to, your application is developed, you develop it, you deploy it, and you want to scale it up when and where you require the scale, right? So let's say your system is loaded. So when you want that particular systems to be scaled up, in that case we use containers. But when you are choosing the containers as a tool, right? These two, Docker and Podman, they are different in terms of their architecture, in terms of how their security plays a role, how at the root level it is designed, right? So they both are containerization tools, but in the way they are different. We'll discuss about it. Okay. So before going to what exactly the difference is about, we'll discuss about what exactly these are, right? So Docker and Podman are the tool designed to help you create, manage, and run your containers. Okay. So containers are like the lightweight portable units. Okay, that include everything your application requires, needs to run, like the code, the runtime environment, the libraries, the dependencies, all of them which are required to run your application smoothly. Okay, but when it comes to Docker and Podman, they serve the same purpose, but their architecture is different, their features are different, the use cases are slightly different. Okay, both are the implementation of the containerization. Okay, now as we have discussed about what exactly the Docker and Podman are, we'll discuss about the differences. Okay, now Docker, which is a centralized, which works as part of the central daemon called Docker to manage all the containers operation. Okay, so there is a daemon which is required at the root privileges to run it. Okay, so the daemon process, I would say. But in Podman, there is no daemon. It's daemonless. Okay, so containers are managed as a child processes only for the Podman CLI. Okay, and it can run in the rootless mode for which will enhance your security. Okay, so this Podman is designed as an daemonless, so it is quite lightweight and it is more secure. Okay, hope you got this point. Why the architecture wise. Now, when it comes to security, one is like Docker, right? So Docker actually at the root level there is a daemon process, right, which can be pose an security threats and it can be compromised. Okay, because to address this, Docker have a rootless mode, but it's not as a default setup. We have to additionally do some setups to make it as a rootless. Okay, so by default it is uh, it's not I would say it will be available as a rootless, right? So that's one of the security concern. But when it comes to Podman, right, so these containers are run in a rootless mode, and by default it is run. Okay, there is no certain configuration or setup needs to be done. This means that they are executed on the regular user processes by reducing the risk of the privileges, right, required, right? So what happens is that it's completely eradicates and it's rootless, right? Now, feature-wise, when you compare this Docker and Podman, okay, so we discussed there are daemon processes, right? So it requires a centralized daemon process, the Docker, but when it comes to Podman, it is daemonless. Now, by default, like it is not supported. The rootless, which we discussed about, that it can be also added as an additional tool, but that is not by default supported. It has to manually do that. But in Podman, it's by default available, and it doesn't need to do anything specially, right? So Kubernetes support is. And now when you're dealing with containerization, orchestration, choreography is important, and then synchronization between the pods is quite important, and pod comes into pictures, right? So this if you see the with the Docker, it's required additional setups to be done, additional tools, right? Now with Podman, there is no separate things to be required. Like it is integrated directly with the Podman generate queue, right? So there is a Docker compose, right? So it is built-in part of the Docker, I mean part, right? But with the help with Podman, we have to use the Docker compose as a separate project to make it as an integration, right? Now pod support, which I mentioned as a Docker, there is no native support. We have to it's not native to the Docker, right? So that we have to explicitly enable, right? Now with Podman, that's not the case. It's actually native to it, and it is by default supports the pod. Now performance wise, if you see, it is slightly have a higher usage because we are using the daemon as a centralized, right? So that's where it's slightly higher in the usage. But when it compares you with the Podman, right? So Podman, it is little bit better and lightweight. Okay. Now performance wise we already discussed, right? It's a daemonless. The Podman is a daemonless design, right? But and it makes it quite faster as compared and much more resource efficient. Okay, especially when you're dealing with the lightweight systems, right? So what Docker is like centralized architecture, it can introduce a slightly overhead, but it's generally optimized for most of the use case. But still, when it compare with the Podman, right, it's less efficient. Okay. Now use cases, where exactly which one to be used in which use case, right? So if you are using Docker, right, and you are a beginner and you're looking for an easy to use containerization tool, Docker is an handy tool, so we can use it. But you have to heavily rely on the Docker Compose and the Docker Hub, right? So this will be the criteria, okay? But when it comes to Podman, right, whether you are wanted an higher security, whether you wanted to deal with a rootless operation, this is what your priority is about, then Podman would be the better choice. And it is a lightweight, and also it's quite integrates with the Kubernetes tools, right? So when you're working with an enterprise setting and like Red Hat or ecosystem, this is quite prominent and it is efficient to use it. Okay. Hope this is useful. Now, when it comes to the commands, right? So there are different commands available in Docker to create an Docker file, Docker image, etc. Right? Now, very common command is like we use this Docker command, that is Docker run -d as an nginx, and Podman as an Podman run -d nginx. Both commands are achieve the same results, but as we already discussed, Podman is daemonless approach, and it ensures that container is a child process of the user. Okay, so Docker and Podman are powerful tools in their own way. Now, but when it comes to a mature system, Docker is quite easy to use, and like Podman, it offers both security and flexibility with a daemonless architecture. Okay. Hope this video was able to help you to understand what exactly the Docker and Podman, what is the difference is, when to use it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for watching.